Ya-da-da-dum. To put a monkey on a one-horse day. Giddy up, people, man, tiny folks, gnomes and halflings too. You're gonna put a log down in the fireplace, and you're gonna burn that Yule. You find a nice log, you take a stick and beat the log, and then you burn it down to ash. Hey, it's a pagan holiday taken away by Christianity. Come on. My Yule log, a star from the religion of Mithras. What's it called? Mithras? Mithras? Yeah, something like that. Don't build one you didn't pop. Monkeys around the tree. You can't spell the word Yule without E. So come and sit a while with me. It's the night time. It's a lifetime. It's been dark for 13 days. It's the right time to have a lifetime filled with D&D today. I got a monkey pop, jingle hop, turkey and tunes. If you don't like my nose, then you can take all of your monkey pants and take them back to your own YouTube show. All right, well, what do we got here? Let's see if I can press the correct button. And see if we can just have a little bit of a Yule. Yule! Well, greetings here, programmers. Greetings. My name's Hankern Farnell, and Yule. Welcome back to Runehammer, you guys. This is just a fine Yule evening here, sitting by the fireplace with my log and my mug. You know, there's so many shenanigans involved with getting all this ready. Shenanigans, I say. Now that the light is on, now that we're all here together, by the way, hello everybody. It's like, whoa, okay, let's calm down. Everything's in place. We've got a great scary story to read tonight, as is our tradition here. But before we get to all that, let's just chew the fat a little while. Why don't you pour yourself a nice hot toddy? Maybe you're having a little whiskey. Maybe some festive mead. Perfect for an evening like this. Last Christmas, there was snow everywhere. It was beautiful. It was amazing. This Christmas, it's just wet and dark. I feel like it got dark as I was waking up today. That's how dark it is out here. Very dark. Very dark. Anyways, it's Christmas time again. It is the Yule season has come, and it's fantastic. So what I wanted to talk about is you guys pull up your chairs, everybody get cozy, get your Santa suit on, get your wool socks, your hot cocoa. You guys have not seen my ugly mug on YouTube for pert near a fortnight. It's been a long, dry epoch since I've been on here. So if I keep looking over here, it's because there's animal shenanigans happening right now. Shenanimals. It has been forever since I've been on YouTube. So God bless you guys. May all the gods bless you guys for all the kind messages that you're sending me, participating on Patreon, hanging out on Facebook and all this good stuff. The whole deal. And asking, sort of, is everything all right? Where am I? What's happening? Let's make cool videos like back in the day and all this stuff, right? I love it. I love the amount of energy that has been created around Runehammer and around just us playing D&D together. It was a huge year for the hobby in general, but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. More than anything, I'm asked this question, like, am I done? Is Runehammer done on YouTube? Is it over? Nothing is over. Nothing is over until we say it is. Just like Rambo said, it's over for you. No, nothing is over. all these animals were all asleep until I started talking, and now there's monkey business going on. Shoot! No! Get out of here! There's a new infant in the house, and the infant is insane. Oh. Okay. Yes. Let me see if I can just. All my careful preparations ruined. How's that? Okay. Whew. All right. Like the video is like a few moments behind what's actual, so it's pretty funny to see it later. Okay, anyway, what am I talking about? YouTube. These are the most distracting beasts imaginable. Distracting beasts and where to find them. At my house. Oh my God. Okay, you're just gonna have to hang on, everybody. She is fascinated by anything that has a wire on it, which is everything in this modern world we live in. This is Tilly, everybody. Her name is Tilson, mischievous baby. What am I talking about? YouTube. For God's sake. No, nothing is over. That was the answer. Absolutely nothing is over. I'm just getting started on YouTube. It's been a gangbusters year. But, yes, I have not been making videos for like 2 months now. And amazingly, all you guys are still hanging out. Tilly is her name. Tilly is her name. And, no, what is she doing? Here. Nothing. So I've taken a couple of months off from the sort of the video grind, not as like a vacation or anything, but more as a vision quest. I've been looking for something innovative to do on YouTube, and as you guys have probably noticed, things have changed this year in like digital culture. Things have changed a lot. Maybe it's because of that show, The Black Mirror, with its weirdness. Maybe it's because there's that creepy movie Cams. Have you guys seen that? It's about like, it's about live streaming for money and stuff like that. Hang on, here she goes again. You. It's the right time for the night time to go riding in a one-horse sleigh. Okay, well, lesson learned on that. You can't have an infant cat around and have a bunch of wires. It doesn't work. Ooh, man, it's just hot and cozy. I hope you guys are all hot and cozy at home. Nice and warm fireplace. Okay, wow. Wow, this is what you tuned in for. Right, guys? Okay. Everything's going to be great. So I've got my comments over here so I can see you guys every once in a while. So what was I doing for these 2 months on YouTube? Let's get back to it. Well, first of all, I've been making a ton of new material for Patreon to publish, for my home group, for my online groups. Just been making and creating and playing a ton. That's been the main thing I've been doing. And I don't know if you guys know, but like the YouTube lifestyle takes all your time. I mean, it's a lot of work, not only to do all the filming, but to do all the editing and like think of new ideas and right? So instead of doing that, I was just getting back to the absolute fundamentals of the hobby. Just playing, making art, writing, meeting new people, and trying to just get back into that root. And as I was about to say before Tilly started jumping all over the wires, things have really changed this year. And this is something substantive to say. So it's about 7 o'clock, so now we're kind of really, let's get started here. Let's get going. In 2018, the digital culture around vlogging and YouTube and Instagram and this sort of daily sort of video connectivity that we've been experiencing, I feel like it hit some kind of a strange transformative state in 2018. I think people are getting a little more aware of their sort of screen toxification. Like there's too many screens in our lives, and they're in our lives too frequently sometimes. And the sort of mobile revolution, the way that phones are now used with Instagram, with YouTube, with everything, it's put us in this sort of never-ending media stream. Now that is, on the one hand, extremely fun. Think back about playing D&D in the 80s. You didn't know anybody who played D&D. Nobody knew kind of what they were really doing, at least where I was from. It was hard to find anyone who was into it at all, or like had books, or knew like where to get other books, or the whole thing was a big dark room, right? And you very slowly worked your way into the hobby and started learning the parts and pieces and meeting a couple people, but it took years, literally years. Nowadays, because of this revolution, we can meet each other. We're in great numbers. We can play online with people all over the world. You can find people who want to play sci-fi RPGs. Like, whoa, mind-blowing, right? I could never find that as a kid. And it's not hard. People are everywhere. And you guys have gotten to know me via YouTube. So obviously, I love the tool set. I love the whole digital lifestyle. It's absolutely fantastic for a D&D enthusiast, for an RPG player. But with all that said, something did slightly change in 2018 with the way that this digital life is part of our sort of daily social culture. And to me, I wanted to go back to that. I wanted to go back to before that, before I got into YouTube. Because remember, I got into YouTube because we were having a blast playing D&D, and I kind of noticed like, oh, people are kind of doing some interesting stuff with D&D on YouTube. Like, this is kind of coming up. This feels like it's, here it comes. And I think that wave has now arrived, or maybe is even now kind of washing past us. That wave of not initial enthusiasm. I mean, Scotty was doing it for 5 years, you know. But to me, it was an earlier period, and somehow things have changed now, and I see sort of one group of YouTubers moving forward in different ways, changing and growing, and then I see a whole new group coming up. Like one of the ones I'm most excited about is, I think it's called Nick's Craft Shack. And Nick is like, has this kind of street aesthetic with his accent and stuff, you know, like, you know, hey, you know, this is gonna be dope and stuff like that. But then he does terrain that's very similar to sort of my style. He's got some good modular ideas. The first video I watched of his, I instantly went and crafted his idea, which was a flippable woods board that had a road on the other side. And like, it's great to see this new wave coming. And so with this whole diatribe I'm on, you know, what am I getting at with all this? It led me to think very deeply about what I'm doing on YouTube and like, how am I really contributing and making a difference? And I know that that people want to see more room designs and people want to see more of kind of the videos that I did 2 years ago or even a little more. But I mean, to be a bit blunt, like I just can't go back in time like that. And honestly, don't want to go back in time like that. So what do? You know, I don't want to just necessarily go, okay, let's just kind of pretend, you know, nothing crazy ever happened and, you know, go back to room design, go back to craft videos and stuff like this. Here, I'm going to go autofocus because I don't think I'm liking this focus situation. So I don't want to go back and just, I mean, it was really fun. And when I look at my earlier videos, like the amount of work in those videos is ridiculous. But I don't want to just go back and just do more of that. I want to do something next. That's Runehammer 2.0 kind of a thing. And to be totally frank, I don't know what it is yet. I just don't know. And so it's been a matter of asking that question of what to do and looking for the answer to that question at the table with my awesome people that I play with on Roll20. Y'all know who you are. Thank you for being awesome. And you know, we oscillate. We have wacky games, we have serious games, we have heated discussions, we have, you know, like we share a lot together, and I'm super grateful for everyone there. Then there's some sort of new groups and some new people that are appearing, starting to sort of come in, you know, and there's going to be, I think, even more games ahead on the digital front. And then, of course, my table group, which has been spectacular. It's only 3 players, which I really like. It's a very small group, and it's made for a tight little game. You guys know who you are. Props. Thanks for being awesome. So how is the answer going to be found inside the hobby itself? And I think this is something that a lot of us can ask ourselves in a way that I think is very interesting, because I don't think that the hobby is just, sort of, a spectator sport. It isn't something where we're going to watch Critical Role and be satisfied, or we're going to watch, some of those amazing like miniature painting channels, which are so cool. But frankly, it's never quite the same to watch even a master do their work as it is to try yourself and to do it yourself. And I mean, this is the very root of why we play RPGs and not other things, right? RPGs is a do-it-yourself, you create the substance kind of thing. Another thing I've learned as a publisher in this past year is that supplements are so far outsold by cores. And why is that? Core books sell so much better. Why is that? And I think it's because of the DIY element. RPG players don't necessarily want you to make all the stuff. They want to do that. Oh, yeah. And that, to me, is what's so dang fun about it. And cool. Okay. Man, is that hot. Lordy, Lord. Okay, so what am I getting at? I'm basically getting at, thank you for your patience. I'm not sure what I'm going to do on YouTube next. I really am not. And it's an honest existential journey that I'm on, not to just do what I did. And so I look to the next generation of people coming up into YouTube to take that mantle and do some of those things and show us their craft styles and their room design styles and stuff like that. But my hobby and my focus is back to my journal, back to my groups, and back to my games. If you really want to keep up with the sort of guts of what I do sort of day to day, you guys all know, jump on Twitter, jump on Facebook, go to the Runehammer forums and all that good stuff. Okay, so that's the fundamental explanation of like where, what's going on and all that kind of stuff. Thank you everybody for stopping in. Oh, hey, there's Dave. That's cool. Thanks, Nicholas. Appreciate that. I'll take a little swig for you. How about that? But this is our tradition, to gather and the Yule, think about D&D, think about the year behind and the year ahead. So before we get into our scary story for tonight, I have the Holy Book right here. This past year has been absolutely insane and awesome, and ups and downs and volatility that I never could have imagined. As many of you know, it began with Ragnarok and the sort of writing experience and writing exercise of Ragnarok. For me, Ragnarok was, basically getting divorced, facing this whole like living alone thing and freaking out. But also I had a sort of major creative burst back then, and that went well. And then as the summer went on, like some more, sort of stability returned, and, kind of found a new life there and didn't have to be alone so much anymore. And then the weirdest thing happened, which is like the more prosperous I became, especially, like Runehammer did great this year. I managed to survive as a micro business for the year. But as prosperity seemed to be coming my way, creativity became more and more challenging. And this is really surprising. You would think that if you're happy and you're somewhat stable, well, that's when all the creativity comes, right? And at least for me, this year I've discovered that is not the case. Now, one of the main things we talk about on Runehammer is creativity and how to harness it, how to get better at it, how to control it, how to push it. And I think what I have learned, and I give all kinds of advice that comes from research on that topic, but I think what I've discovered here at the end of 2018 is that I really do not have those answers. I'm just as much at the whim of creative volatility as all of you guys. And as many of you know, this is the root of our hobby. It's the root of loving RPGs, is the enthusiasm to be creative, and sometimes the uncontrollable rise and fall of that enthusiasm. It's crazy. Your creative output, you're kind of at its mercy almost. And that is especially the place that I've been in when it comes to YouTube. So the instinct to continue to build gameplay and to play with friends, that is undiminished, if not stronger than ever. But it can be challenging to sort of come across as someone who knows something about a topic, right? And that was the utility of my channel in its early days. But the more that I explored deeply into my own hobby, it's just like Socrates said, what is it? The only thing we truly know is that we know nothing type of a thing, right? And that was the lesson that I discovered more and more this year. So, wow. A lot of great stuff happened. A lot of pain happened in the early part of the year. And it's been a wild ride. I'm sure for all of you guys too. Now, a lot of you guys talk to me personally on a one-on-one level. And I know there's a lot of stories have risen and fallen this year. And it's just amazing always to look back. Now, what's going on next year? Next year is, I still don't know. I mean, mainly I'm getting more into playing, and I really want to get more into publishing. I have a really fun time making stuff, seeing it appear out in the wild. It's really fun. And so I want to team up with people who do it way better than I do, like Eric from Bloat Games, like Alan Barr, who does Tiny D6. I want to work more with Kelsey Dion from the Arcane Library. I want to be a better writer, be a better creator, and learn more of the ins and outs of publishing so that I can get further, get books into cooler places, and see more giggles at the table. So that's kind of where my whole jam is. And thank you everybody for all the comments. I'm kind of sort of semi-reading them as they're cruising by over there. Have you been hit hard by people leaving Patreon? No, not at all. No, Solomon Kane, no. Patreon, and of course, a lot of YouTube nowadays has a lot of, thank you patrons, and, check me out on Patreon and everything. There's a reason that creators are so thankful for Patreon. I do think it is absolutely awesome. It sure as heck pays my bills for the most part, and mostly because of generosity. I mean, I do the podcast and I do other things. Some of my publishing comes free to some of the patrons over there. But really, I think deep down, it's just people who want to see you keep going. And that is just an unreplaceable, powerful way to keep artists working. So I'm a big hell yeah on Patreon. So anyway, that's kind of the intro for tonight. It's like, I know it's a little cheesy, but I totally do see this sort of year-end time as a time to look back on the year and think about the next year. I know it's a completely arbitrary, mishmash pagan holiday that's been co-opted by the Christian military-industrial complex. But I don't care. I still love it. Love Christmas. I love the feeling of looking back and looking forward. It just feels so unsatisfying. Hey, Merry Christmas, man. To not be able to give you guys a really definitive answer on where this is going to go in 2019. I do think we need a replacement live forum. I think we need something cooler, something more slick and more fun. I just don't know what it is yet. I'm waiting for technology to kind of surprise me a little bit and for my own brain to go, ooh, cooking videos. I don't know. It's just like, just the amount of creativity that has come into YouTube, and like the whole Vine movement that happened and then died away, and then the whole Instagram movement. And it's just, things have really changed. It's just, the world is so big right now as far as creation. Like, where to go with it? I don't know. So, since we just don't quite have an answer, we're going to set that aside. We're just going to enjoy the Yule. Let me see if I can catch up on some of the stuff you guys are asking over here. Community built game. I love those ideas. That's the West Marches type game, or any sort of community built world and then ongoing living world. I love that stuff, but I just haven't found a tool set that really makes it happen. Everybody always gets very excited at the beginning about the idea, but it seems to dwindle because of the amount of labor that can be involved. And, people have jobs and stuff like that. So I haven't seen it fully come together, but I would love us, or anyone, I would love to see that really come together. Rune Ladle. I love the idea of Rune Ladle. Dwarvish cooking. Hank, is this going to be up afterwards? Yeah, I'll leave this one up. I'm not gonna drink a ton tonight. Merry Christmas to you. Hey, Merry Christmas to you. Yeah, and same with everybody. You know, whatever you're going through here at the end of the year, good, bad, or indifferent, you know, I hope it works out, and I hope the world is just a hair better place than it was before. Booze is food. Yeah, that's my whole cooking channel. I don't expect or demand content. Whatever you decide to share, I'm in. Thank you, man. And I hope everybody understands, like, where this is. It's really getting interesting. Like, let's talk about D&D a little bit. What happened to D&D in 2018? And I don't mean D&D in the generic sense like I often use it, but I mean Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. When I started the channel and the player's handbook had come out and the DMG and I did those reviews, I really feel that D&D has changed quite a bit from that beginning. I say it all the time, but I think that the 5th edition Monster Manual is one of the best books they've ever made. Just a really, really tight, well-executed, fun book. And since then, I have been a little bit spinning off of the D&D world. I'm not sure what it is, but it keeps on not winding up at my table. So I've talked about this a little bit. You know, the ones that have really wound up at my table are Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Symbaroum, you know, the Burning Wheel and Dungeon World, Mouse Guard. Those things have had a much bigger impact on me in 2018 than D&D proper. And I don't know if you guys are experiencing that or not, but I think I'm going deeper down the rabbit hole of more indie style RPGs. I have a funny video from like a year and a half ago, I think, where I'm kind of, you know, riffing on the hilarity of the term indie RPG. You know, like RPGs already aren't like tiny enough niche. You have to go into an even tinier niche. But I think it's where I'm winding up, you know, like really have been enjoying smaller, tighter books. And when it comes to maps, you know, I used to look to books for my maps and stuff. You know, as a dungeon master, you constantly need maps. And my main source of map data these days is 2 Minute Tabletop on Patreon. I mean, that is my quintessential map stopping point. That's where I get the stuff I need. And then for my home game, you know, I draw my own maps. But that's a major shift. Like for your primary source of RPG data coming from a website, from Patreon, that's like, whoa. So there's a shift happening in the hobby, and maybe it's just happening to me and I'm generalizing it to everybody. But I think it's awesome. I think it's absolutely spectacular, but it asks a great deal of the creative. You know, you really need to know your creative anchor to be meaningful, relevant, and innovative in such a robust environment. By the way, thank you so much, Winston. Thank you for the Christmas tip there. That's just wonderful. And you know, if you guys want to throw ducats in the jar, please feel free. Of course, they go right into the Runehammer Fund, you know, which goes into getting books and making stuff and publishing and getting more computer gear, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, if you want to save your ducats for your family for Christmas, that's the better thing to do. Okay, so I don't have anything really huge to say. It's just that pensive mood. I got into D&D 2 years ago, and you've been, oh yeah, Jim, hey, great. Oh, that's awesome, man. Thanks. And by the way, I really mean what I said at the opening is like the number of personal messages that I get one-on-one about, you know, game mastering challenges and learning and improving and growing. It really isn't an exaggeration or anything like that. You guys are spectacular, awesome people on a cool creative journey, and I'm just really happy and grateful to be part of it. And I hope that just continues. And the way to continue that next year is, you know, I just need to continue to publish so that I can continue to pay bills, need to continue to bring that heat to Patreon, and most importantly, to stay in the hobby. And not to become a sort of, you know, a cerebro, but to just be a hobbyist like you guys. To be doing it on the weekly, working on the journal, making the terrain, rolling the dice, like doing the hobby, not treating it like a business. And I think that's that return to authenticity that just constantly has to be rejuvenated in all of us. Yeah, Call of Cthulhu is D100 and Roll Under and all that stuff. I think it's really good. It's survived the test of time. The books are really fun. There's something about that size that makes me want to read it. I find that spending more and more of my creative time on. I say, oh, that's great. Yeah, yeah, and you know, ICRPG has done amazingly well in 2018. I mean, for its own scale, but I really need to get it to retail to start to like get more to a scale like Blades in the Dark or Dungeon World. And I feel that I am within striking distance of those peers, those colleagues of mine. It's just a matter of keep on working at it. But I don't know if you guys noticed, ICRPG slid in at the number 10 spot in the top 10 sci-fi games of 2018. So that's just like mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. I think gaming system is just a mean to an end. Oh yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, and if your players and you are getting along and you're honest with each other about what you want the game to be, and you can have those constructive discussions about what this hobby is, you can play anything and do anything, and it's great. Just like, you know, anything with true friends. Okay, so that's just 20 minutes of jibba-jabbing, and I think I'm starting to feel the old Yule spirit coming on. What's that sound? Is that the sound of Yule? All right, so we have, as you guys know, I always read from the Necronomicon on Christmas. I mean, it's only fitting, right? The fire's looking pretty cozy. I think it can just hang out there. Wait, no. Okay, what is that? The Council of Despair? Let's put a couple logs on there. You're probably gonna have to look at my. There we go. There we go. Let's get that bugger right on there. And get that little bugger right on there. There we go. And get that bugger on there. There we go. Okay. Probably one of the greatest moments of all of Runehammer was when I tipped over my stove onto the camera in Canada. I don't know if you guys saw that. That was pretty funny. Okay. This story is called Cool Air. Now, this isn't by any means the most well-known of Lovecraft's stories. But I was just looking through, and it did remind me of a fun one from a year ago or so that I did, called The Lonely Vigil of Reginald Henson, where he's sitting next to like his undead wife on these rocking chairs in the Old West, and he's like watching her with a shotgun in case she moves and stuff. Real weird, creepy, dark kind of business. But this story reminds me of that story, and I like that. So pull up a chair, get comfy. Thanks, Hunter. Appreciate that. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. There's 150 of us just kicking it here, and it's almost Christmas time. I hope that your household is peaceful and happy as we come into Christmas tomorrow, and it's just going to be great. Cool Air by H.P. Lovecraft. You ask me to explain why I am afraid of a draft of cool air, and why I shiver more than others upon entering a cold room, and seem nauseated and repelled when the chill of evening creeps through the heat of a mild autumn day. There are those who say I respond to cold as most do to a bad odor, and I am the last to deny the impression. But what I will do is to relate the most horrible circumstances I ever encountered, and leave it to you to judge whether or not this format is suitable explanation for my peculiarity. It is the mistake to fancy that horror is associated inextricably with darkness, silence, and solitude. I found it in the glare of mid-afternoon, in the clangor of a metropolis, and in the teeming midst of a shabby and commonplace rooming house, with a prosaic landlady and two stalwart men by my side. In the spring of 1923, I had secured some dreary and unprofitable magazine work in New York City, and being unable to pay any substantial rent, began drifting from one cheap boarding establishment to another in search of a room that might combine the qualities of decent cleanliness, endurable furnishings, and very reasonable price. It soon developed I had only a choice between different evils, but after a time I came upon a house in West 14th Street, which disgusted me a bit less than the others I had sampled. The place was a 4-story mansion of brownstone, dating apparently from the late 40s, and fitted with woodwork and marble, whose stained and sullied splendor argued to a descent from high levels of tasteful opulence. In the rooms, large and lofty, and decorated with impossible paper and ridiculously ornate stucco cornices, there lingered a depressing mustiness and a hint of obscure cookery, but the floors were clean, and the linen tolerably regular, and the hot water not too often cold or turned off, so that I came to regard it as a last bearable place to hibernate until one might really live again. The landlady, a slatternly, almost bearded Spanish woman named Herrero, did not annoy me with gossip or with criticisms of the late-burning electric light of my third-floor hall room, or my fellow lodgers were quiet and they were uncommunicative as one might desire, being mostly Spaniards, as little above the coarsest and crudest folk. Only the din of the streetcars and the thoroughfare below proved to be a serious annoyance. I had been there about 3 weeks when the first odd incident occurred. One evening, at about 8, I heard a spattering on the floor and became suddenly aware that I had been smelling the pungent odor of ammonia for some time. And looking about, I saw that the ceiling was wet and dripping, the soaking apparently proceeding from a corner to the side toward the street. Anxious to stop the matter at its source, I hastened to the basement to tell the landlady, and was assured by her that the trouble would quickly be set right. "Doctor Munoz," she cried, as she rushed upstairs ahead of me. We have spilled the chemicals. He is too sick for doctor himself. Sicker and sicker all the time, but he will not have an other for help. He is very queer in his sickness. All day he take funny-smelling baths, and he cannot get excited or warm. All his own housework he do. His little room are full of bottles and machines. He do not work as doctor, but he was great once. My father in Barcelona have heard of him, and only just now he fix an arm of the plumber that got hurt of sudden. He never go out, only on roof. And my boy Esteban, he bring him his food and laundry and medicines and chemicals. My God, the sal ammoniac that man uses to keep him cool. Crazy how Lovecraft writes in this kind of almost like gutter talk. So you have to do the crazy accent to even read it. Mrs. Herrero disappeared up the staircase to the 4th floor, and I returned to my room. The ammonia ceased to drip, and as I cleaned up what had spilled and opened the window for air, I heard the landlady's heavy footsteps above. Dr. Munoz I had never heard, save for certain sounds of some gasoline-driven mechanism, since his step was soft and gentle. I wondered for a moment what the strange affliction of this man might be, and whether his obstinate refusal of outside aid was not the result of rather baseless eccentricity. There is, I reflected tritely, an infinite deal of pathos in the state of an eminent person who has come down in the world. Wow, that is a heavy-duty sentence. There is an infinite deal of pathos in the state of an eminent person who has come down in the world. Oh my gosh, that is an amazing, amazing sentence. I might never have known Dr. Munoz had it not been for the heart attack that suddenly seized me one forenoon as I sat writing in my room. Physicians had told me of the danger of these spells, and I knew there was no time to be lost, and so remembering what the landlady had said about the invalid's help of the injured workman, I dragged myself upstairs and knocked feebly at the door above mine. My knock was answered in good English by a curious voice some distance to the right, asking my name and my business, and these things became stated. There came an opening of the door next to the one I had sought. A rush of cool air greeted me, and though the day was one of the hottest in late June, I shivered as I crossed the threshold into a large apartment whose rich and tasteful decorations surprised me in this nest of squalor and seediness. A folding couch now filled its diurnal role of sofa, and the mahogany furniture, sumptuous hangings, odd paintings, and mellow bookshelves all bespoke a gentleman's study rather than a boarding-house bedroom. I now saw that the hall room above mine, the little room, as the landlady had called it, of bottles and machines of which Mr. Herrero had mentioned, was merely the laboratory of the doctor, and his main living quarters lay in the spacious adjoining room, whose convenient alcoves and large contiguous bathroom permitted him to hide all dressers and obtrusely utilitarian devices. Dr. Munoz most certainly was a man of birth, cultivation, and discrimination. The figure before me was but exquisitely proportioned, and clad in a somewhat formal dress of perfect fit and cut. A high-bred face of masterful, though not arrogant expression was adorned by a short iron-gray full beard, and an old-fashioned pince-nez shielded the full. I'm not sure what that is. Dark eyes and surrounded the aquiline nose, which gave a Moorish touch to his physiognomy, otherwise dominantly Celtiberian. Thick, well-trimmed hair that argued the punctual calls of a barber was parted gracefully above a high forehead, and the whole picture was one of striking intelligence and superior blood and breeding. Nevertheless, I saw Dr. Munoz in that blast of cool air, and I felt a repugnance which nothing in his aspect could justify. Only his lividly inclined complexion and coldness to touch could have afforded a physical basis for this feeling, and even those things should have been excusable, considering the man's known invalidism. It might, too, have been the singular cold that alienated me, for such chilliness was abnormal on so hot a day, and the abnormal always excites aversion, distrust, and fear. But repugnance was soon forgotten in admiration, for the strange physician's extreme skill at once became manifest despite the ice-coldness and shakiness of his bloodless-looking hands. He clearly understood my needs at a glance and ministered to them with a master's deftness, and while reassuring me that finely modulated, though oddly hollow and timberless voice, that he was the bitterest of sworn enemies to death, and had sunk his fortune and lost all his friends in a lifetime of bizarre experiments devoted to death's bafflement and extirpation. Something of the benevolent fanatic seemed to reside in him, and he rambled on almost garrulously sounded at my chest and mixed in a suitable draught of drugs fetched from the smaller laboratory room, and evidently he found the society of a well-born man a rare novelty in this dingy environment, and he was moved to help me and to speak to me and share his memories. His voice, if strange, was at least soothing, and I could not even perceive that he breathed as the fluent sentences rolled urbanely out. He sought to distract my mind from my own seizure by speaking of his theories and experiments, and I remember his tactfully consoling me about my weak heart and insisting in will and consciousness are stronger than organic life itself, so that if a bodily frame be but originally healthy and carefully preserved, it may, through a scientific enhancement of those qualities, retain a kind of nervous animation, despite the most serious impairments, defects, or even absences in the battery of specific organs. He might, he half-jestingly said, someday teach me to live, or at least to possess some kind of conscious existence, without any heart at all. For his part, he was afflicted with a complication of maladies requiring a very exact regimen which included constant cold. Any marked rise in temperature might, if prolonged, affect him fatally, and the frigidity of his habitation, some 55 or 56 degrees Fahrenheit, was maintained by an absorption system of ammonia cooling the gasoline engine of those pumps that I often heard in my room below. So, this dude's kind of creepy. And in true, Lovecraftian fashion, I'm going to read by candlelight here as I lean into this book with you guys. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Relieved of my seizure in a marvelously short while, I left the shivery place and disciple and devotee of the gifted recluse. After that, I paid him frequently overcoded calls, listening a while he told the researchers and almost ghastly results, and trembling a bit when I examined the unconventional and astonishingly ancient volumes on his shelves. I was eventually, I may add, almost cured of my disease for all time by his skillful ministrations. It seemed that he did not scorn the incantations of the medievalists, since he believed these cryptic formulae to contain rare psychological stimuli, which might conceivably have singular effects on the substance of the nervous system from which organic pulsations had fled. I was touched by his account of the aged Dr. Torres of Valencia, who had shared his earlier experiments and nursed him through the great illness of 18 years before, when his present disorders proceeded. No sooner had the venerable practitioner saved his colleague than he himself succumbed to the grim enemy he had fought. Perhaps the strain had been too great. As the weeks passed, I observed with regret that my new friend was indeed slowly but unmistakably losing ground physically, and as Mrs. Herrero had suggested, the livid aspect of his countenance was intensified. His voice became more hollow and indistinct. His muscular motions were less perfectly coordinated, and his mind and will displayed less resilience and initiative. Of this sad change he seemed by no means unaware, and little by little his expression and conversation took on a gruesome irony, which restored in me something of the subtle repulsion I had originally felt toward him. Oh man, that's sad. He developed strange caprices, acquiring a fondness of exotic spices and Egyptian incense until his room smelled like the vault of a sepulchred pharaoh at the Valley of the Kings. And at the same time, his demands for cold air increased, and with my aid he amplified the ammonia piping in his room and modified the pumps to feed his refrigeration machine until he can keep the temperature as low as 34 or 40 degrees. And finally, even 28 degrees. The bathroom and laboratory, of course, being slightly less chilled in order that the water might not freeze and that the chemical processes might be impeded. The tenant adjoining him complained of the icy air from around the connecting door, and so I helped him fit heavy hangings to obviate the difficulty. A kind of growing horror of outre and morbid cast seemed to possess him. He talked of death incessantly, but he laughed hollowly when such things as burial or funeral arrangements were gently suggested. Ugh. All in all, he became a disconcerting and even gruesome companion, and yet in my gratitude for his healing I could not well abandon him to the strangers around him, and I was careful to dust his room and attend his needs each day, muffled in a heavy ulster which I bought specifically for the purpose. I likewise did much of his shopping, and gasped in bafflement at some of the chemicals he ordered from druggeries and laboratory supply houses. An increasing and unexplained atmosphere of panic seemed to rise around his apartment. The whole house, as I've said before, had a musty odor, but the smell in his room was far worse. And in spite of all the spices and the incense and the pungent chemicals and the new incessant baths which he insisted on taking unaided, I perceived that it must have been connected with his ailment, and shuddered when I reflected on what that ailment might be. Mrs. Herrero crossed herself when she looked at him, and gave him up unreservedly to me, not even letting her son Esteban continue to run errands for him. When I suggested other physicians, the sufferer would only fly into a rage, and he seemed to be completely beyond entertainment. He evidently feared the physical effect of violent emotion, and yet his will and driving force waxed rather than waned, and he refused to be confined to his bed. The lassitude of his earlier ill days gave place to a return to his fiery purpose, so that he seemed about to hurl defiance into death demons, even as the ancient enemy seized him. The presence of eating, always curiously like a formality with him, he virtually abandoned, and the mental power alone appeared to keep him from total collapse. He acquired a habit of writing long documents of some sort, while he carefully sealed and filled same with injunctions that I transmit them from his death to certain persons whom he had named, and for the most part lettered East Indians, but including a once celebrated French physician as well, now generally thought dead, about whom the most inconceivable things had been whispered. As it happened, I burned all these papers undelivered and unopened. His aspect and voice became utterly frightful, and his presence almost unbearable. One September day, an unexpected glimpse of him induced an epileptic fit in a man who had come to repair his electric desk lamp, a fit for which he prescribed effectively, whilst keeping himself well out of sight. And that man, oddly enough, had been through the terrors of the Great War without having incurred any fright so thorough. So just to look at this guy is terrifying. That's how bad it's getting. Then, in the middle of October, the horror of horrors came with stupefying suddenness. One night, about 11, the pump of the refrigeration machine broke down, so that within 3 hours the process of ammonia cooling became impossible. Dr. Munoz summoned me by thumping on the floor, and I worked desperately to repair the injury while my host cursed in a tone whose lifeless, rattling hollowness surpassed description. My amateur efforts, however, proved of no use, and when I had new piston would have been obtained. I'm not sure. I think I read that wrong. The moribund hermit's rage and fear, swelling to grotesque proportions, seemed likely to shatter what remained of his failing physique. And once a spasm caused him to clap his hands to his eyes and rush into the bathroom. He groped his way out of it with his face tightly bandaged. And I never saw his eyes again. The frigidity of the apartment was now sensibly diminishing. And at about 5 a.m, the doctor retired to the bathroom, commanding me to keep him supplied with all the ice I could obtain from all-night drugstores and cafeterias, and as I was returned from my sometimes discouraging trips and lay my icy spoils before the closed bathroom door, I could hear a restless splashing within and a thick voice croaking out the order for more. At length, a warm day broke, and the shops opened one by one. I asked Esteban either to help me with the ice fetching while I obtained the pump piston, or to order the piston while I continued to get ice, but, instructed by his mother, Esteban refused. Finally, I hired a seedy-looking loafer, whom I encountered on the corner of 8th Avenue, to keep the patient supplied with ice from a little shop where I introduced him, and applied myself diligently to the task of finding a pump piston and engaging workmen competent to install it. The task seemed interminable, and I raged almost as violently as the hermit when I saw the hours slipping by in a breathless, foodless round of vain telephoning and a hectic quest from place to place, hither and thither by subway and surface car. About noon, I encountered a suitable supply house far downtown, and approximately 1:30 that afternoon arrived at my boarding place with the necessary paraphernalia and 2 sturdy and intelligent mechanics. I had done all I could and hoped I was in time. Black terror, however, had preceded me. The house was in utter turmoil, and above the chatter of awed voices, I could hear a man praying in a deep basso. Fiendish things were in the air, and lodgers tolled over the beads of their rosaries as they caught the odor from beneath the doctor's closed door. The lounger I had hired, it seems, had fled screaming and mad-eyed not long after his second delivery of ice, perhaps as a result of excessive curiosity. He could not, of course, have locked the door behind him, yet it was now fastened, presumably from the inside. There was no sound within save a nameless, sort of slow, thick dripping. Briefly consulting Mrs. Herrero and the workmen, despite a fear that gnawed my innermost soul, I advised the breaking down of the door, but the landlady found a way to turn the key from the outside with some wire device. We had previously opened all the doors and all the other rooms in the hall and flung the windows to the very top. And now, our noses protected by handkerchiefs, we tremblingly invaded the accursed south room, which blazed with the warm sun of early afternoon. A kind of dark, slimy trail led from the open bathroom door to the hall door, and thence to the desk, where a terrible little pool had accumulated, and something was scrawled there in pencil, in an awful blind hand on a piece of paper hideously smeared as though by the very claws that traced the hurried last words. And then the trail led to the couch and ended unutterably. What was, or had been on that couch, I cannot and dare not say here. But this is what I shiveringly puzzled out on the stickily smeared paper before I drew a match and burned it to a crisp. What I puzzled out in terror as the landlady and 2 mechanics rushed frantically from that hellish place to babble their incoherent stories at the nearest police station. The nauseous words seemed well nigh incredible in that yellow sunlight, and the clatter of cars and motor trucks ascending clamorously from the crowded 14th Street, yet I confess I believed them then. Whether I believe them now, I honestly do not know. There are things about which it is better not to speculate, and all that I can say is that I hate the smell of ammonia and grow faint at a draught of unusually cool air. The end, ran that noisome scrawl on the piece of paper. The end is here. No more ice. The man looked and ran away, warmer every minute, and the tissues can't last. I fancy you know. What I said about the will and the nerves and the preserved body after the organs ceased to work. It was a good theory, but I couldn't keep it up indefinitely. There was a gradual deterioration I had not foreseen. Dr. Torres knew, but the shock had killed him. He couldn't stand what he had to do. He had to get me in a strange, dark, cold place. And when he minded my letter and nursed me back, the organs would never work again. It had to be done my way. Artificial preservation. For you see, I died 18 years ago. Dun, dun, dun. That is the story of Cool Air. And it's a doozy. So basically there's this old guy in an apartment who's been dead for 20 years. And he's refrigerating himself to try to slow the decay of his artificially animated flesh. And then one of his eyes pop out. He goes to the bathroom, comes back, never has eyes again. Like his eyes shriveled up like Christmas raisins. Great stuff. Love those stories. I tell you, some of them are really difficult to read out loud. Like, you know, it's a little bit dim light. The font is like 2-point font. And Lovecraft is out of his stinking mind as far as his word selection. So, wacky. Yeah, a lich. Exactly. So, hey, thanks, Jim. That's a great segue. Is what an awesome theme, if you're going to bring a lich into your game, is have an NPC that it's not immediately obvious that they've been dead for like decades. But then if you get to know them, like they have this weird refrigeration setup and they have like these weird chemicals that they're like injecting or soaking in or something, and you're kind of like, oh my God, what's going on? Then you know, like you could have this cool reveal. Maybe the phylactery could be the organs. So that's what he had mentioned, is like your organs all fail right away when you die, but that's okay. You just take them all out. It's just like, what? Oh my God. So you can have your lich has all of his organs or her organs in a big jar. And that's the sort of the erstwhile phylactery. Oh man, I love it. Yeah. Or that's a great one too. You don't even know this guy or girl's a lich. Then in another point in the adventure, you find the diary and make the connection, and then he jumps out from behind a sofa and zaps you with magic missile. Whew. Yeah, canopic. Great word. Well, it's awesome hanging out with you guys. My Yule log is starting to burn a little bit lower. And I think I'm going to have myself a nice warm cup of coffee. Sit by my tree, which is right over yonder, and pet my cat. Pet my dogs. And dream of a fine holiday with friends and family. So I hope you guys have that opportunity this year to be with friends and family. I hope you all get a bunch of cool RPG loot for Christmas. And if you don't, just get your own loot after Christmas. Because the week after Christmas and before New Year's is a great time to get together with people and play a rousing game of D&D. Maybe a little family zombicide. But more than anything, thank you so much, you guys, for everything. I mean, of everyone on YouTube that tunes in when I make stuff. Clearly you guys are the most hardcore, and I'm sure a lot of you are on Patreon as well. So thank you, everybody, and everyone watching this video in the near future, if you are. Thank you, everyone. For 2018 has been awesome. It's crazy to think, but Runehammer is more than 3 years old now on YouTube, and that's just crazy. I never set out to make an ongoing YouTube channel. That was never my idea. I thought I was going to make maybe like 20 videos and it'd be good to go. I do have one idea I wanted to save for the end of the stream here to see, you know, who would stick around, but I did have a notion for next year's YouTube project, and it's called the 12 video project, and I wanted to make 12 videos for the entire year, one per month, and they would be this sort of much more exhaustive look at 12 different aspects of our hobby. and really make some. I've noticed that YouTube isn't just about vlogging. It's really like if you can make something good, people will watch it for years into the future. And so I kind of am in the mood to try to make some really lasting videos that are almost have a textbook-like feel to them, so that they are revisitable assets for all the wonderful people that are continuing to discover the greatest hobby in the world. And so that's kind of my idea right now. But yeah, like one of them would be a retrospective, yes. Then one of them would be about like the crafting aspect. Not just how I do it, how everybody who's doing it out there, all the resources involved, all the sites you can go to, the YouTubers, the everything, like the techniques, the supplies, everything. Try to answer like all of these questions, because now I have 3 years of questions to draw from. Yo, Jason, thanks, dude. You don't have to throw that in there. Appreciate it, man. But to take all of this wonderful ride that has been so far, and compress it into 12 like truly enduring pieces of thought. and I'd like to try to do that's just no small order. So I think just breathe a little bit, don't get ahead of myself, and I don't really want to use the stream tonight to talk about everything that's coming out and like do promo stuff, so we're just gonna slide right past that. But most of all, I just want to invite everyone to come to this thoughtful place that I've come to this evening, looking back on the amazing change that is happening in our hobby right now. It's not just growth. It's not just technology. It has a different place in our social sphere now, in our cultures. And it's become an international hobby. It's a digital hobby now. It's not just pen and paper, but it's both. I think it's reaching more people. The number of like RPG podcasts and YouTube channels is just staggering. So whatever particular flavor you really enjoy, there's something out there for you. And just like sort of finding 2-minute tabletop for me, like go look for it, and finding it is a great shot in the arm for the fuel that runs our hobby machine, which is enthusiasm. And sometimes that enthusiasm runs a little thin and you get spun off the hobby. Sometimes you're spun off the hobby for years at a time. But it's a good time to take a look at what's going on and ask yourself, how can this continue to be awesome? And I know that I ask myself that all the time, and maybe we can find an answer together. Hankrin, we just started Dark Sun because of you. Oh my gosh. Blasted world of Athos. Dark Sun is fantastic. And you can take it or leave it as far as picking it apart. It can be as dark sunny or as little dark sun as you need. But hell yeah, it's a great stylistic place to start. I mean, for me, like sort of just one last thing I want to say. Hey, thanks, Rory. Appreciate it. And, oh man, Lord, God's have mercy on my poor oath-sworn brethren, because this is something I was just chewing their ears off last night about, being a real pill, is, for me, the real essence of the games that I'm loving is not how cool the setting is. It's not, like how sort of weird or, how like touchable the worlds are, the characters, or how, like tasty and creative. It's really been about continuity over time. It's been about building context with people and building context between characters that makes sense, about building context with the world, so that as the game continues and continues and continues, it reaches a point of absolutely fascinating nuance, because there's so many underlayers to each action you're taking. That to me is the real essence of the game, and of the hobby. And how can you find that, and where can you find it, and who will go find it with you? I think those are the questions to ponder and think about as we go into another year of doing all this awesome stuff. And hey, hello Richard, thanks for tuning in. Good to see everybody. So yeah, all we did was hang around and have a little fire, and read a little scary story, and we're kind of winding down. And I also just wanted to wave at everybody. I just wanted to say, hey, I'm still here, still going to be on YouTube. Stay with me. Keep your eye on Runehammer via the forums or Facebook or even on DriveThruRPG. There's a lot going on. And I hope that everyone will come and tune in when I make what I hope to be a triumphant return. So that's it for me. I'm going to get out of here, you guys. There's presents to wrap, and there's coffee to sip, and there's probably, I think, is there football? Football's still on TV, so my Seahawks are playing. What's going on? Oh, I think they're winning. That's cool. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is Anchor Infernal over here, signing off. Oh, wait, here's one last thing. Have you ever read Stealing Cthulhu? No, I haven't. But you know how I used to do those Layer of Knowledge videos? Since I stopped doing them, I made a stack of like books that I've gotten through and read without doing Layer of Knowledge, and it's huge. So if I ever do return to Layer of Knowledge, good grief, just so many damn books. So everybody go read a book. Keep it real, don't steal, you always get a deal. Love your neighbor, love thyself. Merry Christmas, good Yule to all of you. And I will see you guys in 2019. You believe that stuff? It's crazy. We're in the future. And the future is cool. All right, you guys. Thanks, everybody, once again. Thanks for the tips. Those of you threw some tips in the jar. I really appreciate it. And that's it for me. I shall weather out and the fire is slowly dabble. When the monkeys are in the snow, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. When the monkeys are in the night, I'm gonna roll a die. I'll try to make my attack right, but I keep rolling ones tonight. What a right time, just about time to play D&D today. It's the night time, it's the right time to go driving in a big old sleigh. Pow!